to be with you today. The thing that I'm excited about with jumping into this position is the partnerships available. And I guess I should introduce myself since I am new. I am Brian Welch. I am taking over Kim Larson's position with Family Community Engagement at the Nebraska Department of Education. My background is that I come from teaching. I've been a sixth grade English teacher for the last 11 years. And I worked as a para in a library for 2 years before that. So I'm really excited to be with you. We also have an amazing group of partners with us, the NCFL Family Community Learning Centers that run the State Family Engagement Center. Many of them are unable to be with us tonight because they had some personal and family things come up, but they did a lot of work helping us get ready. We also have people from Nebraska Children's Family Foundation with us today. We work with people in Title IC, the migrant community, Lincoln Community Learning Centers, and Nebraska Extension. So it is so great to see and have so much partnership and so much shared leadership together. We would like to welcome our panelists. Bill Comley, I asked and I still said it wrong. I apologize.
That's all right.
Bill Comley from Schuyler Elementary School. He is a principal there. We have Monica Wells and Tanya Jolly from the Buffett Early Childhood Institute. Jill Garrett, the director of Kids Can, and Deb Hembry, who is a parent of a student in Lincoln, Nebraska. Thank you for being here with us today. Before we get to the panel discussion, I am going to just share a little bit of background of why this topic was chosen. This is some data from the Nebraska Department of Education Teacher Vacancy Survey from last year. This is sent out to all of the Nebraska school districts at the beginning of the school year. And what it asks is how many unfilled positions that they have. What this showed is that there were 143 districts that had unfilled positions at the beginning of last school year. But the real shocking thing is that the number of unfilled positions over those 143 that responded was 482 unfilled positions. That was an increase of 161 unfilled positions from 2 years prior. There is a gap in when the survey was sent out because of the COVID pandemic. And so the 2019 is the most recent survey before this one. But that is a sharp increase. It's almost an increase of a third, a 33% increase from the previous one. And then there were 68 of those positions were left vacant. They weren't filled at all in any way. The most reported solution to fill these 482 positions were 16% was that it just wasn't filled. They had to combine classes or something like that. 14%, they were filled by hiring someone who was not appropriately endorsed in the content area. For example, they may have hired an English teacher to teach a math class or a science teacher to teach a social studies class. Now, they are still professionals and they are endorsed, but they're not appropriately endorsed. Sometimes people are hired with provisional permits. For example, if they come with a teaching permit from Kansas, that does not directly transfer over. They get a provisional permit and then they need to fulfill Nebraska requirements to have a full permit. Or sometimes they're hiring a person with a transitional permit, someone from the workforce coming in to fill a position. So maybe someone with experience, an accountant, becoming a math teacher who arguably knows the math well, but they don't have a teaching permit, a teaching certificate. The three areas of Nebraska that were hit hardest with this was the central, metro, and northeast regions. They had the largest number of unfilled positions by quite a bit. It was very large amount. So on the early child care side, the Buffett Early Childhood Institute put out a report. Thank you for those who are with us for that report. 9 out of 10 providers, that report stated that 9 out of 10 child care providers were struggling to fill positions, and then 7 out of 10 providers reported staff completely leaving the child care industry altogether. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd, and we're going to hear from our panelists.
All right. Well, we just kind of want to have a casual discussion here. You don't have to answer every question if you don't want to. If you feel like someone else stole your answer or answered the question the same way you would have, that is fine. But if you do feel like you want to go ahead and answer to the question, each of the panelists, please go ahead and respond with each of the questions. So we'll give you a chance to do that. The question, I think you can all see the questions up on the screen there, but we'll just start with the first questions. What decisions have you made because of educator and caregiver shortages in your personal and professional life? And if anyone would like to get started.
I'll start. So yeah, at the elementary level, I think Northeast Nebraska definitely would be something, but in rural Nebraska, it's been tough. We are currently 6. We did not hire 6 teachers. We're 6 short at the elementary and 1 at the preschool. What we did do is we had two individuals that are looking towards getting teaching degrees, and they do have a sub license. So currently we have subs in those rooms. Other than that, we've just had to absorb it and make classrooms larger. That's really all we could do. There's just no other options. We have tried multiple avenues, whether, that's going places, going out of state. We could not just find, as with everyone, they can just not find employees.
I can go next. I know during the pandemic, at the time I was at Nelson Mandela Elementary. I love Nelson Mandela. But there was times when there was a caregiver shortage. There was not enough places for our children to go. And we had to actually, during probably the beginning of the pandemic, we were one of the schools that we closed for a little bit, but not very long. I think we were one of the schools that opened up first in Omaha. We actually opened up a classroom, and for those families who didn't have caregivers, couldn't get their kids to a caregiver, we actually welcomed them in the school and found a way to make it work. So a lot went into that. At the same time, we have teachers who were dealing with the same kind of issues. And so we allowed their children to come in as well. So in the heart of everything, we just did what we had to do and found a way to make it work.
Okay, I will go next. Hello. I was just going to talk about kind of 3 different experiences I've had on this question. When the pandemic first occurred, I was an administrator in Lincoln Public Schools, and I supervised a program that had students that were all over the city of Lincoln. And so when we had a teacher that was absent, we had to, we couldn't just pull from the hallway or have someone that could sub that was in another classroom, because there wasn't a hallway or a classroom because they were working out in the community. And so what I had to do to make that be successful and make sure that we had teachers in every classroom is I really took the time to build relationships with substitutes that were willing to cover. And so those phone calls sometimes happened at 5:30 in the morning, just to make sure that we had support. And then if we didn't have enough subs, sometimes we could move children or students over to another location. But it was trying to get as many people to be able to be on that sub list that really helped. And then if we needed some coverage, then and we didn't have a sub, then I would cover a classroom. So I was back in the classroom a lot during that year of the pandemic. And then last year, I started the Buffett Early Childhood Institute, and one of my roles was we cover the Omaha metro area, which is 11 school districts. So I had the privilege of being in a couple of Omaha public school schools on a more regular basis, just because our goal was to really support teachers in schools during the pandemic as it continued that second year. And what I saw in the schools was a lot of people pulling together to cover. I saw, teachers that were more than willing to, of course they were paid, but to take 2 classrooms and to see teachers, walking down the hall with 2 groups of 3rd or 4th graders was just really honorable that they would take the time to do that and support children. And just saw everybody saying yes when they needed to. I think some typical roles that didn't get to actually, cover their role like they used to, because they had to really, cover. So you saw counselors subbing in rooms, and simple pieces, just even, lunchroom duties. A lot of the kids would go to their classroom to make sure they were spread out. And so not only did you have to try to find coverage for teachers, but you're also trying to find coverage to help support a typical day in a classroom. And so in this year, what I'm seeing is teacher shortage, and continuous para shortage has been something that's been long-term, but it's been really more impacted in the last few years too. So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of different trends, but the same over the course of the last 3 years. But definitely the teacher shortage and staff shortage in the buildings has been impacted because of the pandemic and all the pieces that went over the last 3 years that have impacted it. So yeah, it's been interesting to see all the changes over the last 3 years.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. I don't think you could see me. My video doesn't seem to be working here. But my name's Jill Garrett. I have been with Kids Can for about 6 years. I recently have moved on to another position in Omaha, but I was the early childhood director for almost 6 years. One thing that I found is with COVID, we lost a large portion of staff. We were only closed for 2 weeks, but not all the staff felt comfortable coming back. So that made it really, really tough to try and staff those rooms, especially when there were guidelines we needed to follow, with the Douglas County. So I would say some decisions we had to make were maybe hiring staff that didn't really have an early childhood background. So we weren't able to be as picky with the quality of staff that we have, just because there weren't that many people looking for jobs at that point. So even though we know that, best practice, we want to try and get somebody in that early childhood field. Unfortunately, it just didn't always happen that way. We did increase our minimum wage, and we offered bonuses as well to staff to try and help with the retention, as well as referral bonuses to help.
And Debbie, as a parent, have you had to make decisions based on?
Not for childcare, no, I haven't. He stays home with us, and we own our own business, so I didn't have any of the shortages that you guys have.
Let's move on to that second question. What innovations have you seen or heard of to help deal with this shortage?
Well, we want the same order.
That works. That's very, you say, that's very Lutheran of us. We go to church, you always do things.
That's right. Well, one thing that we've really started that we've noticed is a lot of our paras are local. They really are within, about a 10-mile circle of here. So one thing that we're starting is we've partnered with CCC, our Central Community College, And we're going to allow paras, if they want to go into teaching, the school district, I believe, is going to fully pay for that. They'll get their associates there. They'll be able to go to college. And during the school day, they've allowed them to take 2 hours of the day to do their homework. So we're not going to send them home. We're going to allow them to do that schoolwork here. Not sure how we're going to completely make that work, because that leaves us short in other areas. But then we've also worked to deal with Wayne State College then, and the students will move on and get their teaching degree from Wayne State. I mean, for us, that's something that I think a lot of those people are local. I would guess 80–85% will stay here once they get their degree. And I think it's kind of smart and proactive of the board to kind of move that direction. I do think it will help. I know it's going to be quite a bit of money out of their pockets, but I think long term it'll pay off.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I agree with that. Anytime that we can help further educate our staff, and then they also get the buy-in, and they're more committed as well, which is also going to help them stay longer. So I think that's a great program.
Right. And we see that sometimes with our best teachers, they were paras first. They've kind of seen both directions and how to treat people. They do the right thing. I personally think we're on a good avenue there. We had a good number. I would say there was about 25 across the district that showed up to the initial meeting. So I'm encouraged by that.
That's good.
I can go next. And agree to this previous school that I was at, they started really embracing a great a para to teach program. And so getting those paras ready for that next level. And we've had several of them. Each classroom has a teacher and a para at Mandela. So a lot of them were so excited and been waiting for that opportunity. So they were allowed to, get a jump start on becoming some of our great teachers of the future. So that's some things that I saw. But one of the major innovations that isn't so profound is just taking care of the people, making sure that we had a good, well-rounded EAP program. How are we taking care of our teachers and our caregivers? What are we putting into that? Making sure that we take time to ask those questions. How are you doing? How is your family doing? How can we help you with what you're going through at home? But honestly, being there, I think if the pandemic didn't teach us anything else, it's to pause and take care of ourselves and to take care of each other. So that was one of the big emphasis that we did. Not like a major profound innovation, but definitely important to making sure that we retain the great educators we do have, because mental health was an issue before the pandemic. Imagine what people are going through now. So it was a big emphasis on that. And me at the time being the counselor, of course, I'm like, this is what we have to do. We have to rally around that. But also another thing that I saw was our, and I talk about this often, our librarian / tech teacher, she turned into the Geek Squad, and she would go out to our daycares and our childcare centers. And she was helping them with their connection and helping them make sure that they had what they need to be able to take care of the families and the children that they had there. So banding together, making sure that we're taking care of our people, but also the surrounding areas that affect our community, racing together. So those are some of the innovations that I saw.
Okay, so before we started this panel, I took the time to write just briefly some answers, that I was going to respond to these questions. And ironically, I thought I would share with you my dissertation topic, which made me feel like that was kind of the innovation. I did incentives to impact teacher career ladder growth. And so I finished this during the pandemic of actually when we were shut down. And I was able to study a program at a school system that had incentives for paras to support their ability to get their teaching certificate. And so I was able to study 12 paras that were part of the program or had graduated from the program and were now teachers. And so I was able to have some of those great questions to find out if this program was working, and if so, how could we better the program in order to support this teacher career ladder growth. And so the findings were that they wanted more technology to help support their learning. They wanted to be able to have a cadre and a way to be able to support their schooling, their work, and the things that we're doing. And then a couple other things to help support just having someone that they could go to, so a mentor. So those were some things that came up in the research. I could talk all day and I won't bore you with my dissertation information, but Conley, if there's any way that I can help with your district, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and send you my lovely dissertation if you want to hear and see some things. But you know, my mom was a para for 30 years, and so I think it's really important to see how can we help support not only hiring paras that might be parents or might be already in the community that could be interested, and then help support them if they do want to become teachers. Not all paras want to, but if they do, you know, there's a great way of being able to support them. And then I'm just like Monica, I talked about just having those close relationships with the people that you're working with. I agree with her 100%. And just really supporting them. It's just the little things that mean a lot right now. And I think just that recognition and that specific praise of what they're doing goes a long way.
I agree. I can go next.
Yeah, go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, as a parent, I probably don't see the shortage of the teachers, but I do see that a lot of, my son's in middle school, so I do see that the PTA was a little more active, like in elementary, to help support the teachers and be there to help them. In middle school, it does not seem to be as active, or the parents do not seem to have time or actually know what to do to help the teachers. So the middle schools, at least I see that they don't have that extra support that the elementary school teachers had.
I agree with you, Debbie. Me as a parent, I was very engaged when my kids were in elementary. And as they kept growing, you know, the support or the resources were not there. So
Yes.
I felt very disengaged, you know, as a parent with in middle school, and then obviously in high school even more.
I think it's very hard to get the parents involved. We've tried my son goes to Dawes, so it's very difficult to get any of the parents to say, yes, we're willing to help, or yes, we'll do something for the teachers, or we have time we could donate. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to help on any level with the teachers.
Well, I think I'm going to jump in here because I had the pleasure of having Debbie's son 6th grade. And I think I definitely saw that as a teacher, but I also think that some small things that parents do, and one of the reasons I invited Debbie to be with us today is that, like, she just responded to my emails Like that alone was such a big deal to me. Cause like sending out an email to all the parents about, hey, there's this thing. And then Debbie would just say, okay, thanks for letting us know. And that was it. But that like made my day every time. So I think that, I don't know. I think that that's something that maybe we can do as parents. And I know I've tried to do it more since that interaction with Debbie 2 years ago. I've tried to do it more with my children's teachers.
I think it's important. We need to be able to support the teachers that are still staying because so many have left that it is very hard for the kids to build up some kind of relationship with the teachers if they're only there for 6 months or a year. It's very tough for them to have somebody to go and talk to.
Yeah, you're making me think too, because we have 2 kids in middle school. One of them is in a private school, one's in a public school, and we definitely have had a lot of I don't know what you'd call it. Just last year, just the shortages at the school made us make one of the decisions to have one of our kids. The better school was the private school for him. Our other daughter, public school, but that communication with the teachers, that's where the teachers were so open to communicating with us that it helped us. It just helped us as parents retain our child in the public school where I love, is my first choice for that child. But I don't know. I want to get more involved and see that, but I struggle to see the ways to get involved in stuff in some ways with the middle school as opposed to the elementary. That's an interesting topic. I think everybody got a chance to get in on that last question a little bit. And I think some people answered the third question a little bit as well. But what steps have you taken to retain the current staff that you have?
I'll go back to what Monica said, relationships. I think that's the biggest thing for us, show people you do value them. There's a lot more money out there. We all know that. A lot of people are throwing money at people, but I have had a couple people recently not take those jobs just for the fact that they like their job here. I know they can make more money. We all know that we can. Then especially our paras, you see all the signs at all the restaurants or different places. Everyone pays more than schools. I think just appreciating them and showing them that you value them, that goes a long ways. It doesn't go far enough, but in what we can do, I think just building relationships. Just this year, we started something in our school. If you're within 10 feet of someone, you need to acknowledge them in some pleasantry, whether it's good morning or how are your kids, how are you doing? And that goes not for staff, but that goes for parents, for everyone. So just something positive that we can try to make a difference. That I think that's all we can do. And I know Monica spoke on that, but I think that is the key to really making people happy and want them to stay where they are.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Staff morale, if you can build the relationships and keep the morale of the staff high, that is going to help retain your staff. So for example, we have what's called a high five board, where the staff are encouraged to write notes, write high fives to each other on different things, and then they hang them up. And then once a month, we would draw a high five slip, and then they get a little something special. So that type of stuff, it's just those little morale boosters that doesn't have to cost a lot, but it really makes people appreciate you and your leadership for doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And I know I'm set up to go next, but I would just, um, it's the same thing as I said before. Relationships matter in any situation, whether we're talking about parents, whether we're talking about the children, the staff. Relationships matter, and so I loved hearing that the staff could have went somewhere else and made more money, but they decided to stay. There's a connection there. They know that somebody cares about them, not just them, but about their family. So that, if somebody's within, a certain feet of you and you have, acknowledge them, that's huge. People were alienated during the powerful pause, as I call it. People were in their homes. They forgot what that connection is like. Some people were scared to have the conversations. You go to these conferences now and you can wear a yellow badge if you're okay with touching someone, a red one if you want them to stay away, or green if you're like, please, it's been long, somebody hug me. But that is like, if you want to have the pulse for how our society is right now, it's true. That's where we're at. But it pays you nothing to be kind to someone, to ask about them, ask about their family, and truly care about what they're doing. Again, I'm going to stress that mental health portion. I say that people were struggling before the pandemic. How do you think they're struggling now? But I heard that from a parent. Parent told me that. I struggled before the pandemic, Mrs. Wells. How do you think I'm feeling now? And I equate that to our teachers as I talk to them and encourage them to talk to someone. So that mental health portion is huge. Making sure that you are looking for the signs of depression, or if they're pulling away, or different things like that, making sure that they have that information readily available, not that they have to dig through or call HR. Have that available. Have that readily available so that they can get that in time of need. And most of those programs, you can bring your family as well. So maybe they're struggling at work because they have a 9-year-old who didn't do well through the pandemic and needs some mental health support.
Yep.
Make sure that that's readily available and that they can get that as well. So again, I won't, I know I sound like a broken record, but that is the answer. Take care of your people. We have to take care of each other.
When I think about this, I think about something that I've been really fortunate to have along my education journey. I have a group of educators that we meet every month. It's outside of school time, but it's just a time for us to be together, and we talk education most of the time, but there are there's that time too for personal. And so we've built relationships over that time frame. And I think it's really important to give educators time together, because it's sometimes hard to do in a typical day. But if we can give that time for them to collaborate when they're not doing staff development or they're with kids. And so, for example, I have a group of teachers that I'm going to be working with this Saturday, and I've offered to just stay an extra hour for them, just to past what we have on the agenda, just to have time together and just have that opportunity to mingle with each other, because they haven't had that opportunity very often, and have that time to just be together. And so I really believe in them being with each other, and that's really powerful too, to have those relationships within a school or in a childcare setting. So yeah, and I agree with everybody, what everybody's saying. There's just that being that carrying that relationship piece is key to support, and that checking in. And I have the pleasure of working with Monica, and she checks in with me every single day. So I know she's speaking of what she says, what she means. So I think it's really important to those relationships.
One other part I will put in is reintroducing these educators to their why, reminding them of why they fell in love with teaching in the first place, and having them share that. There's a reason why they got into education. And it's just a good time to reintroduce them to their why. Why did you start? Because a lot of times that'll re-energize them and get them going. So that's another portion that I would say that we really harped on, reintroducing them to their why.
I think we all need to remind ourselves of why we do those things. What we do sometimes. That's good.
No doubt.
We have a little bit of time for some small group discussions. But I wanted to give the panelists an opportunity, if there's something you wanted to have out on the table before we divide up, we're gonna break up into two small groups to kind of talk about the topics that I just put in the chat. And you'll have a facilitator in your room to help lead that discussion. But is there anything else we want to put out on the table before we do that?
I did think of, for Debbie, being a parent on the panel, like switching that to, as a parent, what can we do? What have you done to help retain staff at schools?
Personally, I helped Dawes quite a bit last year on Teacher Appreciation Week. I sent warm cookies over to the staff, one for everybody. So they had something special during the week. I helped, I gave Christmas gifts out. I gave gifts at the end of the year for the room teachers. I gave some stuff to the office for them to help pass out to the teachers, like little raffle items that they could use. And then I helped with some of the teacher meals during the parent-teacher conference. It was hard to get anybody to do anything. So, I mean, we're fortunate. I'm blessed. I have an only child, so we was able to probably help a little bit more.
And I hear the cookies were yummy, Debbie. That's that's what was placed in the chat here.
But Debbie, I cannot imagine. That's a lot for one parent. I mean, I cannot even imagine doing that.
You know, Dawes is small. There's only like 400 and some students, and there's like 100 staff. So it's not a lot. I suppose it is, but we've got to support the teachers. If they don't stay, the kids have nobody.
Yeah, that's very true. That's amazing what you did. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And then, like Sandra said, is there anything anybody else wants to add? I have one of my daughters is autistic nonverbal, and she's in the background. If you can hear her sometimes when I'm talking, she makes a lot of noise. She's pretty happy right now.
I'm gonna go ahead and open up the room so you can go into your room, and I'll give you a little bit of warning when we need to come back together to wrap up our time together today.